Y'all, the book of Jude is very short. It consists of one chapter, and Jude starts the chapter off by identifying himself as Jesus' servant. Now, that word matters because Jude intentionally places himself under Christ's authority. He could have highlighted family connections or personal history, but he didn't. And that's important because he was James' brother. And y'all know James was connected to Jesus because they were half brothers. Instead of choosing familiarity, he chose humility. Now, his credibility comes from obedience and faith and not proximity, which was a good thing. Jude then goes on to explain why the temperature of his letter had changed. What was meant to be warm, what was meant to be a warm, encouraging letter became a necessary warning. Now, the reason why this was because something dangerous had crept into the community, and that was false teaching. It came in quietly, y'all, and believers were being influenced without even realizing it. Now, because of this, Jude urges them to actively defend the faith that was already handed down to them. He's not calling for new doctrine or innovation. He's calling for faithfulness to what has already been revealed. Now, to make the seriousness of this situation clear, Jude points to history. He reminds his readers that God, past actions revealed how he responds to rebellion. He first refers to the Israelites who were delivered from Egypt. Even after being saved, those who later refused to trust God faced judgment. Now, deliverance didn't excuse disbelief. It did not. Next, Jude refers to angels who abandoned the road God assigned them. Their rejection to God's order led them to restraint and judgment. Then he brings up Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah, whose pursuit of corruption and rebellion became lasting example of the consequences of rejecting God's designs. Those were three examples he put in there for us to see. Now, these three examples, they expose the character of the false teachers. They reject authority, distort freedom, and underestimate accountability. Moving on, y'all. Jude then shifts to an important contrast. He speaks of the archangel Michael. Now, Michael, even when he was contending with the devil, he refused to act on his own authority, and Michael deferred judgment to God. The devil told him something, and Michael's like, I rebuke you. You're going to have to ask God about that. The point is not the story itself, but the posture it reveals. If archangel exercised restraint and reverence to God, how much more shall human beings? Yet the false teachers Jude describes, they acted with arrogance, speaking carelessness, and dismissing authority that they didn't understand. Moving along, Jude goes on to describe these individuals using striking imagery. He compares them to people who take without giving, clouds that promises rain but never delivers, and trees that appear alive but bear no fruit, and waves that churn up impurities. He calls them wandering stars, briefly visible but ultimately lost in darkness. Now, every image communicates instability, emptiness, and danger. They look impressive for a moment, but they lead to nowhere, just empty. Jude then refers to Enoch, a figure known from Genesis for walking closely with God. Now, Enoch's testimony points to God's coming judgment against ungodliness. And Jude doesn't argue about the source. He uses it to reinforce a truth to his readers that his readers already understand. God doesn't overlook rebellion. Judgment is real and accountability is certain. Jude continues by describing how these false teachers operate. They complain, follow their own desires, speak arrogantly, and manipulate others for personal gain. Now they create division and operate apart from the Spirit. Jude remind believers that this behavior wasn't unexpected. The apostles had already warned that such people will arise, driven by desire rather than truth and willing to fracture the community. They didn't care about nothing and no one, only their personal gain. After laying out the danger, Jude turns to the instruction to tell believers how we should all respond. They are to strengthen their faith, remain prayerful, and stay rooted in God's love. They are to wait patiently for Christ while staying alert. Jude also explains how to deal with those affected by false teachings. Now, he said that some of them need gentle correction and others need urgent intervention. But an action must be guided by discernment, humility, and truth. It cannot be addressed any other way. Jude closes with praise. He points believers back to God, who are able to keep them from falling and present them fully restored with joy. Only God can do that because God is worthy of honor and authority forever. Yet he's also personal. He saves, he guards, and he works through his people to bring truth to others. God uses us to help each other. Now, the message of Jude is clear. Faith must be protected, truth must be taken seriously, and humility must shape how believers walk. False teaching, it doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it enters quietly, but God remains faithful, and those who stay anchored in Him are not left unguarded at all.